Hi everyone, Stepan here. In today's video I'm going to show you the last round game from Barcelona Open this summer. So coming into round 9, I was pretty upset about the draw in round 8, which you could have seen in the previous video. I had a completely winning position. I had so much extra. I had a piece and 2 pawns and I blundered into a draw. But still, I had a great plus score in the tournament. I won a lot of rating points, and coming into round 9, I was playing someone rated equally, so I wanted to do well. And I was pretty stressed. And again, I'm going to say this, it's great to play tournaments in cities such as Barcelona. It's just, you have a lot of stuff to do. Usually if you play if you've played in a lot of chess tournaments, then you are aware that they're mostly in weird small towns and villages. For example, the next tournament I'm going to play is going to be in a village with maybe 1,000 people. So spend a week there, and when you're nervous, try to walk around the village. It's not as fun. Anyway, back to the game. This game is a great example of how problems completely unrelated to your chess skill, to your opening preparation, endgame play, tactical ability, or whatever related to chess get to affect the game and get to decide the outcome of the game. So I was white. As I've been testing in Barcelona with the London system, I wanted to see how I did with the opening. I decided to go for it again, so I played d4. And now we get a line which I have mixed feelings about. So after knight f6, bishop f4, my opponent goes for g6. And now if you want to play a normal London, you could have seen my video on the London with black that I published the other day. If I had the black pieces here and black had white would already have an extra tempo with, for example, bishop to g7 or d6. In which case, you would have to go for a passive setup with e3, c3, and etc. Since you are a tempo up in this position compared to that, you get to play more aggressively with knight to c3. You can still go for e3, but knight to c3 is just more aggressive. Now you're basically asking black to decide what he's going to do. He has 2 options. Well, when black plays knight f6, g6, it's a King's Indian player, so they would like to go d6 and then c5 or e5. But once you play knight c3, they can either get out of their comfort zone by playing the best move, which is d5, because you simply have to prevent e4, or they can play bishop to g7, continuing their own stuff, allowing e4 and getting into an unfavorable Pirc or modern defense after d6. This gets very scary. For example, after black plays d6 here, white can simply continue queen to d2 and then go h4, h5, castles, queenside, blah, 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 blah. So that gets very tricky. My opponent played d5 though, and now at least he's not playing the King's Indian. e3, bishop g7, this is all theory, so I'm not going to be spending much time on it. Bishop e2 is slightly strange, knight f3 is more common, but it's pretty much the same. a6, a6 is an okay move, preventing knight b5. Usually there are issues here. For example, if he goes knight c6 instead of a6, then he's just losing. So a6 is normal. Queen to d2, again, normal. b6 is strange. Because in these positions, usually we castle on opposite sides, and he's going to castle kingside, play for c5, break open my center, try to mate me on the queen side, and I'm going to play knight f3, knight e5, rook g1, g4, and open up the king side. b6 is unrelated to any of that and doesn't really fit into the position. I've never seen it in this position. I've never seen the fianchetto on the queen side. Honestly, I don't think it does much, because if I want to, I can just keep his pawn on d5 and his bishop doesn't really have that much scope. In any case, I continue developing knight f3, bishop e7, knight e5, c5. Again, I don't want to take because that makes his bishop good. Why would I take? So bishop f3. Bishop f3 may have been an imprecision. I think at this point I can safely castle kingside or queenside. I don't think there's anything wrong with either move. I just figured bishop f3 could be an annoying move for him and could force concessions from him. Because if he does nothing, maybe I can castle queenside and then go rook d to g1 and then go g4. And if he reacts, maybe he makes a mistake, which I think he did. He played knight e4, which is not a good move. Obviously, this now makes his position worse, because his knight on f6 was a good piece, his bishop on b7 was a bad piece, my knight on c3 is a bad piece, because it's preventing my c-pawn from moving. And now he trades off his good f6 knight for my bad c3 knight. And after d4, my bishop on e2 is amazing. His bishop on b7 is still crap. So, I mean, the only thing he does get is cd4. And after ed4, if he wants to play e3, then fine, improves his bishop. But if he doesn't play e3, then I go knight c6, bishop c6. And bishop to e3, and his bishop is still bad. So after these exchanges, I prefer white in this position. I just think this is a good position. Okay, he went bishop back to b7. And here, I remember showing this game to my coach and saying that I wasn't really sure what to do here, which is true. And in this position, I played rook to d1, excuse me. But I literally had, it was 33% for castles queenside, 33 for castles kingside, and 33 for rook d1. You could make arguments for each. I just don't know which move is best, or didn't know which move was best. And when I finished my own analysis of the game, I turned on the engine, and I'm going to read you the evaluations. Rook d1 plus 0.4. Castles kingside plus 0.8. Castles queenside is not in the first 5 at the moment, but it's the evaluation is pretty much the same. Plus 0.1. So the best move is castles kingside. Then rook to d1 is about the same. If you allow the engine to think that, then it's about the same. I played rook d1, and my coach said, well, why didn't you castle queenside? What's the downside? Well, I don't think there's an immediate downside, but I don't really want my king on b1. I would much rather have my king on g2, and that's what I'd intended to do. I wanted to keep my king on e1 until I see what he does, because if he castles kingside, then I will go g4. If he doesn't castle kingside, then I will go g3 and king f1 and king g2, or castles kingside. I don't know. Still, I think rook d1 is okay. What I did next, I don't think is okay. He played e6, which puts pressure here. Maybe wants to play bishop f6. And here I definitely should have played c4. If I didn't castle kingside, then I need to play queenside. Then I need to play actively on the queenside. I have a pawn majority here, and there's no need to play passively. Instead, I played c3, which, I mean, defends my d4 pawn. It's not attacked. It's attacked twice, defended 3 times. c3 is just a nothing move that, if I played in front of a very good player, I would expect them to say, what's c3? And I agree, c3 is just a stupid move. Okay, bishop f6, g3 have to defend, b5. Okay, which is a great response to my c3 passivity. And here I started to play weird moves, which again, if I saw someone else play, I would say, well, why did you play that? Why didn't you play normal chess moves? I played bishop f1, which conceptually makes sense. I want to play bishop g2 and maybe queen c2, but it's too slow. After rook c8, he is of course preparing his minority attack. This is now a normal Carlsbad on the queen side. If I go bishop g2 and he simply castles and I play something like queen c2, queen d5, and again, he has a great blockade on the light squares. I don't even know how to prepare c4. I would have to bring my bishop back. So yeah, bishop to f1, not a bad idea, but if the idea doesn't work, then it's a waste of time. a3 stopping the minority attack for now. Bishop e7, rook g1. Now this was a bad idea. So he didn't castle yet, and my rook makes no sense on g1. I cannot castle anymore. I'm going to have to spend 2 moves to get my king to g2. Once I get to my king to g2, it's going to be blocking my rook. If I don't get my king to g2, then my bishop is stranded. My king is stranded in the center, and my position is just bad. So at this point, I should be slightly worse. He played queen d7. I played bishop g5. I wanted to trade off the dark squared bishops because mine is just worse. Obviously, this is his good bishop. This is my good bishop. My pawns are on dark squares, so I want to have a light squared bishop. His pawns are on light squares, so he wants to have a dark squared one. So he has to play f6. And I figured, well, f6 is kind of a weakness, so why not provoke f6? Bishop e3. Bishop d5. Amazing blockade on the light squares. This bishop that I've been talking badly about is the best piece on the board. Now, yeah, okay. Rook c1, king f7, bishop e2, rook c6. And now we come to what I wanted to say with the title of this video and the whole idea. At this point, and I remember that vividly, I had 50 minutes or 45 minutes on the clock. I had a bunch of time. My opponent had between 5 and 10 minutes, I think 6 or 7. And there is no... we got no additional time after move 40, I think. Well, let me just check that. I actually have the tournament details here. Yeah, okay. There was no additional time after move 40. I'm just looking at the chess results page. Excuse me. Yeah. So no additional time after move 40. So with 6-7 minutes on the clock, this is a very complex position in which it doesn't really matter who's better if the advantage is only slight if you're in sight knot. And my next move is exactly what you shouldn't do in situations like that. Let me tell you what I think an experienced player would do in a position like this with the white pieces. So you're ahead on the clock. There's a lot of stuff going on. What you want to do is you want to play moves that don't make your position worse, that don't necessarily change the nature of the position, and that possibly make your position better. Therefore, let's look at moves like that. Okay, rook a1 makes perfect sense. Preparing if b4 comes to have a rook on the open a file, excellent, good move. King f1 makes perfect sense. Again, preparing to get my king to g2. Queen to d1, good. Preventing bishop to b3. Maybe trying to get some control on the light squares, maybe trying to play g4, maybe trying to go for an attack. It's a good move. Gives this bishop an additional square. Moves that you don't want to play are moves that change the nature of the position and make your position worse, which is exactly what I did here. Now my mindset was blitz chess, tricky moves, and let's confuse my opponent and he gets into time trouble and makes a mistake, which is not something you should be doing in a tournament game. And I have to say I'm glad this happened to me because it never happened before and it's never going to happen again. Okay, so I learned from this. What I did here was a4. Now a4 is a bad move. No doubt about that, but it's a tricky move which requires time to calculate. It obviously wins a pawn. It's not that I can win. If the pawn is taken, I cannot just go c4 and win a piece. I'm going to show you why. So here's what happens. So he takes the pawn, and if I go c4, then he simply goes rook to c8, and I'm 2 moves away from unpinning. So I don't win a piece. So if I go king f1, he can just play bishop c4 or whatever. Okay, if I go rook a1, for example, then he simply goes rook to b8. And if I take the pawn, then he takes on c3. And if I take on c3, he takes on a4. Again, position is lost for white. If I simply go king f1, Then he goes rook to c8, increasing the pressure. King g2, queen to b7. If I try rook a1, he goes bishop b3. Again, the position is lost. So I thought the only attempt was queen to c2. And this is what I'd planned after a4, ba4. Queen to b7. It was, I think, better to go rook to b8 and then to take on b2 with the rook. But okay, this is still okay. Queen takes. Queen takes. And now my idea was c4 in this position. Again, I'm not threatening to take the bishop because it's pinned after rook hc8, but I may threaten to do that, or I may threaten to play c5. And this was all, I saw all of this before playing a4. I wanted to get this position. Okay, king f1, rook b6 played. And after rook b6, white is actually better. Rook b6 is a mistake. Rook b6 is a mistake. He needs to play his rook to c7 or something to give his bishop squares without leaving the double control on the c file, without leaving the d7 square, because this gives my queen some infiltrations and then doubles his rooks. So he should probably play something like this. And doesn't matter if I win this pawn, he's going to win my c4 pawn. But he did play rook b6. And now I didn't punish it. I made a mistake here. I made a dreadful mistake, which I'd planned all along before playing a4. I wanted to play rook c2 in this position because that unpins. And if the queen moves, for example, queen b1, and the queen is still attacked, the queen moves, take the bishop, position is perfect. That of course doesn't work. Here's why. After queen c2, he has queen b4, which I saw. Well, that's fine. And here I'd intended to play queen to d7, which seems tricky. The bishop has to move, the rook has to move. What's going on? He has a way to defend, of course. He plays rook to c6, again pinning here, defending this one. And if I take here, I basically give up the exchange, which I have to do anyway. And this is what I'd intended. So takes, queen takes e6, king to g7. And now my intention was to go g4 and try to go for complications. But I thought this simply lost. And I couldn't visualize everything properly. I just couldn't figure out whether I should go for this or not. So in this position, I started spending time. My opponent was playing quickly. Even though he had way less time on the clock, he was playing quickly. And even though he had way less time on the clock, I was catching up, or he was catching up. So queen d7, I didn't want to go for queen d7. And then I started improvising. Let me just go back for a moment. Instead of rook to c2, there's a way to actually win this position for white, which, if you remember my game from Scholta in the Adams attack in the Najdorf, where I'd calculated a sequence 5 or 6 moves deep and then didn't double check on each step, which cost me the game. This is the same issue. I'd intended to play rook c2, and I just played it. I didn't stop and think. Because our visualization skills, or mine, are not that good, and sometimes I make mistakes. When I look at the position again, with the pieces actually moving on the board, I may find the improvement, and the improvement is queen d1. So this is the same mistake I made, one in Scholta, one in Barcelona, 2 tournaments in a row, both with white pieces and both in extremely sharp positions. So this is something I have to work on still. Why is queen d1 good? Well, queen d1 threatens to actually win the bishop now, because if you don't do anything, then I just take. My rook is now defended. So he has to play either bishop c6 or bishop a8. Whatever he does, let's say bishop a8, I just go g4. Okay, takes, bishop takes. And here, it's very hard to see what he does, because I have so many pieces coming in. Or after bishop c6, g4, let's say he tries rook to b3, for example. I just go gh5. And if he plays hg4, then bishop g4. If something like rook cb8, then bishop e6, boom. My pieces are coming in. So queen d1 I didn't even consider. I wanted to play rook c2, I played rook c2. Queen b4, and now I just lost the position. As I said, queen d7, and I still think white is okay. Queen d7 I'd intended way before playing a4, I wanted to play queen d7. And as I said, when I started looking at it again, which I did now instead of the previous move, maybe I would have found queen d1, I decided not to do it, and I played the worst move on the board. I played rook a2, which is just... rook a2 is... if you asked me to explain this move, I don't know how to explain this move. I thought a simplification would be okay, and that the endgame would be a draw, which is insane. Here is why. And I hope you see all of this. Bishop c4, queen b4, I have to take. Bishop b4, bishop c4, rook c4. This is lost. This is completely lost. There is no hope in this position. There is absolutely no hope. Okay, king g2, rook d6, rook b1, a5, rook a4, rook c2, rook d1, e5, d5, bishop c5, rook e4, bishop e3, rook e3. There's a bit more hope without the bishop on the board, without the bishops on the board, but it's still dead lost. Rook c5, rook b3, rook d5, rook b7. I don't really know what to say about this. This is just over, so I'm just going to go through the moves because I promised to show you the games until the end. Okay, yeah, I'm going to stop here. Obviously, this is... I have to trade rooks now, and then that's it. So coming back to the critical position, so two mistakes I would like you to learn from. The first one is of a practical nature. Don't play complicated moves if your opponent is in time trouble. Play normal, safe moves, and he's going to make mistakes anyway because of time trouble. And the second mistake, which is even more important, if you've calculated a sequence, stop at each point and calculate again while looking at the board, because when you actually see the position, your visualization skills are better, you can calculate deeper and find the improvements. So yeah, this was round 9, final round. I still had a plus score in the tournament, which is good. But yeah, it was painful to lose the last round. And the tournament went okay. I mean, someone asked in the comments yesterday, how is Barcelona Open? It's one of the best tournaments I've ever been to because of the city and because of the atmosphere. It's just wonderful. I mean, they have parrots in the city. I mean, there are a million green parrots that fly around. It's just great. I mean, I've been to Barcelona before, but never alone. It's weird to go to a city alone. You get to learn a lot about the city when you're alone. Okay, thank you for watching. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm starting to cover games from the Croatian Third League, which were fun. Thank you. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye.